The wind moved strangely that autumn, like a living thing creeping through the yellow stalks. It carried the scent of rot and damp earth, of something that should have been buried long ago, but had not. In the small village of Hallow's End, hidden deep between endless fields of corn, the nights had grown too long and too quiet. Dogs stopped barking after sunset. Cats went missing first, then the smaller livestock, and then people. No one spoke about it aloud, but every door was bolted before the sun slipped below the trees. The villagers said it began after the storm, an angry black-bellied one that ripped through the fields 3 weeks before harvest. Lightning had struck near Old Miller's land, the biggest cornfield in the region, and when the storm passed, the villagers found something standing there that hadn't been there before, a scarecrow. No one admitted to putting it up, and yet there it stood, tall as a man, but wrong in its shape. Its head was too small, wrapped in burlap and stained dark around the eyes, as though it had cried through the fabric. The straw that filled its limbs was slick, almost wet, and the smell that rose from it was not of grass or hay, but of something sour and old, like meat left in the sun. Old Miller was the first to speak against it. He said it was cursed, that the storm brought it from somewhere else. He tried to burn it the next morning, but the scarecrow wouldn't catch. The straw smoked, the burlap blackened, but the fire refused to take hold. "Let it be," the others told him. "It's just a scarecrow." But Miller didn't sleep that night. The next day he was gone. His wife found his boots by the edge of the field, filled with mud and something dark that wasn't mud. The corn around them was trampled flat in a wide circle, as though something heavy had stood there, watching the farmhouse. That was the first disappearance. The nights grew restless after that. The children whispered about hearing voices among the corn, low and hushed, like someone speaking from far away, calling them by name. Mothers forbade their children to play near the fields. Lanterns began to burn through the night in every window, little trembling stars that couldn't hold back the darkness pressing at the edges of the village. And still, the wind carried the whispers. Sometimes it sounded like laughter, sometimes like weeping. By the second week, the animals started vanishing. Farmers woke to find their chicken coops torn open, the wire twisted like hands had pulled at it. Pigs were found with their bellies slit open and straw stuffed inside, as if mocking the thing in the fields. The men gathered at the tavern, their faces pale beneath the yellow light. They spoke in half-sentences, afraid that to say too much would make it more real. "It's the scarecrow," someone finally said. "It's moving." No one laughed. They all had seen it from their windows, the way it seemed to shift positions between dusk and dawn. One night near the north fence, the next by the old well. Some swore its head turned with the wind. Others said it was watching the houses. When the blacksmith's boy vanished, the village could no longer pretend. They searched for him from sunrise to sunset. All they found were his shoes, and inside one of them, a single corn cob carved into the shape of a heart. They found strands of straw in the mud, wet and red at the ends. After that, no one went near the fields. The harvest rotted where it stood. The corn turned brittle and gray. It rattled in the wind like bones. The priest said the land was cursed. He called the villagers to the chapel and prayed until his voice cracked. But even he began to tremble when he saw what had been left at the door the next morning. A cross made of corn stalks, tied with strips of burlap. The priest burned it behind the church, but the smell that rose from it made the air curdle, sweet and foul, like decay. That night he hanged himself from the bell rope. The bell tolled once at midnight and stopped. By the time the leaves began to fall, half the village was gone. Some fled in the night and were never seen again. Others simply disappeared from locked homes. The few who remained kept to their beds, whispering prayers and clutching knives. They said they could hear it moving through the corn after dark, a slow, dragging sound like wet cloth scraping along the ground. Once, someone saw it close enough to describe. Its limbs had changed, no longer made of wood and straw, but something firmer, more human. The burlap sack was torn open at the mouth, revealing teeth too white, too clean. Its eyes were hollow but glistened, as though something looked out from behind them. On the final night before the frost, a woman named Eliza, one of the last who had stayed, heard her dog barking madly in the yard. Then a yelp and silence. She took her lantern and stepped outside. The air was thick and cold. The moon hung low over the cornfields, pale and distant, and she could see something standing at the far edge of her fence. It was still, perfectly still. The light from her lantern caught on its face, and for a moment she saw what looked like skin beneath the burlap. Skin stretched too tight, stitched in places with twine. Straw stuck out from the seams like hair. The head tilted slightly, and Eliza ran back inside, bolting the door. All night she heard it whispering through the cracks in the wood. Not words, but sounds, soft, patient, hungry. By dawn, the village was silent again. Smoke no longer rose from the chimneys. The cornfield was black, flattened, as if trampled by 1,000 feet. Travelers passing months later spoke of seeing scarecrows standing in the fields where no farms remained, one for every house that once stood in Hallow's End. And when the wind blew through them, it sounded like voices. They say if you walk those fields at night, you can still hear the whispers among the corn. They call your name, soft and kind, until you step too close to the rows. Then you see it, standing there, waiting, its sack face tilting toward you, the mouth torn wide, the eyes hollow and wet. And if you run, the stalks close behind you like a door, and no one ever finds you again. Some nights, when the wind is just right, the people in the nearest town swear they see the flicker of lanterns moving far off across the hills. They say it's the lost souls of Hallow's End, still searching for a way home. But others say it's something else. The Scarecrow walking the fields, carrying the lights of those it's taken, feeding the land that birthed it. Because the corn still grows there, tall and golden, long after the frost should have killed it. And at the center of the field, half buried in the soil, there's always a single post, wrapped in burlap and straw, and beneath it, the ground is warm.